Hi, this is Dr. Stephanie Wautier, and I'm the host of Conversations with a Chiropractor. This is not a health how-to, but rather a conversation with some amazing people I've had the pleasure of being with on my journey of life. Think of it more like Tuesdays with Maury, a fireside chat, or chicken soup for the soul. Grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and enjoy this conversation with a chiropractor. On this episode of Conversations with a Chiropractor, you are going to hear from the chiropractor. This is Dr. Stephanie Wautier. Thank you so much for listening. I've had so many people ask me a little bit about my journey as I'm talking to them about their journey. And I thought I would cover this topic that it's not controversial for anyone probably but me, but why I left nursing. So I'll tell you a little bit about the history of how I became a nurse. Many of you may know that when my mom was in her 30s, when I was like about 10, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I am the second of 5 girls, and I just naturally became a caregiver. Not inappropriately. It's not like my little sisters were latchkey kids and I was making food for them, but probably somewhere within me that natural caregiving just came out. When I was growing up, there was a huge focus on grades, and the conversations were not, are you going to college, but where will you go to college? I had little ideas when I was growing up that I wanted to be a beautician, that I wanted to be a dentist. And then as I became older in my high school years, I settled on becoming a nurse. It was practical. It was a great way to make money. I could support myself almost without having many other options or choices or thoughts. I went to nursing school. I went to Michigan State University, had an amazing experience there, loved my time at MSU, loved the College of Nursing. Then when I graduated, I started working at Sparrow Hospital. Actually, I started working there as a nurse's aide even while I was in nursing school. And then my first job was as a med-surg float nurse, which basically in a 12-hour shift, you could go to 3 different floors for 4 hours and see a variety of patients. And as anyone in the world of nursing knows, a lot of times the float nurse gets the worst assignments. So I quickly decided to go, not quickly, but after probably about a year and a half of being a med-surg float, I got a job at Sparrow in the neuro ICU. And that was my first ICU experience. And what I really loved is having 1 or 2 patients, being able to spend so much of my time with them, although they were very critically ill and sometimes even intubated or comatose. I really enjoyed having that relational piece with the families. So I did several years at Sparrow in the neuro ICU before I decided that I wanted to do travel nursing. So my first assignment was in Greeley, Colorado, north of Denver. They call it the meat capital of Colorado. There's a meat packing plant there. But my dear friend from high school lived in Denver, and it was wonderful. We were able to hang out, and she taught me how to ski. It was a very cool experience. From there, I went to Seattle. I worked at Harborview in their neuro ICU. Stunningly beautiful views of the harbor from that neuro ICU. Huge place, level 1 trauma center. We saw 4-state radius, Montana, Idaho, Washington, and Alaska for any brain hemorrhages. That position definitely grew me as a nurse. I stayed in Seattle for I think I re-upped 4 times, so for about a year before I moved to San Francisco. And there I was at a Kaiser hospital on Geary. I vividly remember. Here's a funny Uber story. I always would basically check into a furnished apartment and find on the map where the hospital was. And this is before iPhones and anyways. So The first morning that I worked at my San Francisco hospital, I walked to work. It was like 5 blocks. And the woman who was my mentor that day said, "Oh, where did you park, Stephanie?" And I said, "Oh, I actually walked." And she said, "Don't ever walk in this neighborhood alone at 6 o'clock in the morning again." And this Uber girl, when I was in Seattle, my car was vandalized. I had all my windows broken. And in San Francisco, the apartment that I lived in, which was very nice in Japantown, there was a note by our mailboxes that said, "Be careful, don't let anyone in the door because we've had people robbed at gunpoint." Not only was I having some great nursing experiences, but I was also having some eye-opening life experiences. And anytime I go to the post office in Marquette, Michigan, and there's a line of 4 people, I think, oh, I remember standing in line for more than 2 hours in San Francisco to pick up a package. One of the best things about working in San Francisco was that my sister lived there. She and her husband lived there. And so I would actually volunteer in her classroom sometimes because I worked 3 12-hour shifts, which afforded me a lot of working. Those 3 12s was really amazing. Wherever I went, I became a tourist in that town. Seattle, we went to different places, took the ferry to Victoria, British Columbia, went to the rainforest, skied up in the mountains. I call these my gypsy years because they truly were an amazing time for a single woman to be able to support herself and see the country. And that is what I was able to do. When I was in San Francisco, my grandmother, my mom's mom, got sick in Minneapolis, and then she did end up passing away. So after San Francisco, I went to Minneapolis to live in her home and help get it packed up and ready to sell. In Minneapolis, they didn't have a specific neuro ICU, so I think that I was working in their surgical ICU at the time. From Minneapolis, then I went to New Haven, Connecticut. I was looking for a high bonus. And I know why they give high bonuses at hospitals, because there was a lot of angst and hostility in that department. In fact, it's probably the least welcome I've ever felt as a nurse in a travel nurse situation. And I remember playing the Beyonce song, "I'm a Survivor," every day that I had to go to work. After my New Haven experience, I decided to go home. I decided to give myself a little bit of a break. So I landed at my folks' house in Escanaba, and 3 weeks later, 9/11 happened. I vividly remember my dad, why he was home from work that day, I don't remember, but he woke me up and we were staring at the television, both of us wide-eyed, in shock, in awe. And I remember thinking, oh, I can help. I can go there. I can help. I can do whatever needs to be done. I'm a nurse. And I actually called the Red Cross very early on. And they were like, "We don't need nurses because these people have all died." Truly horrific time. And I'm sure that anyone who's lived through wars, I think so much about my dear friend Nicole, who was born in Lebanon and came to the United States at age 6 because of war in her country. I know that those of us who are in the United States couldn't probably fathom having those terrorist attacks on our land. So thank you to all those who have served. I commemorate those who've lost their life on 9/11. And so here I am living in my parents' home at 20-something, and this tragedy is occurring in our world. So I start working at our local hospital in Escanaba, Michigan. I buy a house. I don't really know what's going to happen with my future at that point. But let me tell you that through all of these travels, through my time at Sparrow, Colorado, Seattle, San Francisco, New Haven, Connecticut, I really had never felt like I had found my niche in nursing. I thought, oh, maybe if I get to labor and delivery, or maybe I could do NICU, or maybe there will be something that fills my heart to its fullest. I really love caring for people, and I still do. And hopefully those of you who know me can see that. There was just something that was always an overloading intensity, hostility, negativity. And maybe I thought that going to like L&D or NICU would be happier or a little bit more loving with the staff. Working in the hospital setting was very hostile. I knew that. And when I say hostile, not like terrorist threat hostile, but just that the environment was very fluctuating depending on who you were working with and who the nurse manager was. In fact, I remember running into a woman in the New Haven, Connecticut hospital in the med room, and I would always introduce myself, say, "Hey, I'm Stephanie, I'm a travel nurse." And this nurse said, "Just keep to yourself, keep your head down, and you're not going to have a bad time here." Basically, the hostility, the negativity was so thick in that unit. Anyone who's worked with women can probably deduct why, and personality conflicts and power conflicts, and then add this very intense ICU experience. And I think I was just soured from that. But I worked in Escanaba, this wonderful, warm place to be. But the unfortunate thing was that I still looked very young. And although I had all this really amazing experience traveling and working at all of these very critical hospitals, we were not even technically in ICU. We were in SCU, a special care unit, because we didn't have certain parameters for care of our patients. So I had a very critically ill patient who was ventilated. And I mean, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, and that's not my intention for the hospital or for anything, but just this was my personal experience. So I was working night shift. I was calling and calling this physician because the patient wasn't doing well. I knew we needed to do something. And at that point, what would have been appropriate is to transfer them to a bigger hospital. So I worked, let's just say it was a Friday night shift, and Saturday morning, the physician on call came in and said, "Who was that nurse who was badgering me?" And I always looked at nurses being the eyes and the ears of the physician and giving them as much information as we could for the main goal of helping the patient not only get better, but survive. So I come back in Saturday night. This patient is still there. He's now too unstable to transfer, quote unquote. I am still in this frantic state of, we got to get him out of here. We got to get him out of here. So the charge nurse takes over, calls the physician. We get an order for that patient to be airlifted, and he codes in the helicopter, and then he codes when he gets there, and he dies. I don't want anybody to think that death, when I just said that I took it lightly. I was sobbing. I was so emotional because I really felt that death could have been prevented. So here I am, this young nurse who's striving for justice, and I really wanted to talk to the ethics committee about basically this physician slandering me for trying to get him to either come in or give me an order for different meds, etc. And the director of nursing was like, "No, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to say anything about this." And I went back to my nurse manager, was just wanting for someone to give me some support in all of this. And she said, "Stephanie, I think maybe a different job would be better for you." So at that moment, when I felt like I had found my landing spot and this team of nurses, I was gutted. I felt like, okay, nothing that I do matters. Like nothing that I do will make a difference. I follow the orders. I do what the physician wants me to do. And again, I'm not dogging physicians, and I'm not saying that I'm the hero who can save everyone. I just felt so much like my hands were tied. So in processing this event, I was talking to my parents, and my dad said, "You want to be the doctor. You want to be the one who can really make the most difference." And at that moment, I thought, you know what? Maybe I do. And at that point, I was 29. I was getting ready to turn 30. I was still single, not married, no children. And I thought, okay, this is the time. This is the crossroads. This is the time for me to go back to school. It's now or never. I don't want to have a career where I am dreading going to work for 30 years. And unfortunately, I did work through those years with many nurses who would come in and you'd sit down to listen to shift report, and they would announce how many days, minutes, hours, months, years till retirement. And I didn't want that to be me. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to tell you how and why I was interested in chiropractic, but that was really the moment where things changed, where I thought, I can't keep doing this. So my folks brought me to the chiropractor since I was about 12. I had an interesting experience where we were doing some sort of dance for a Christmas program at school, and my leg like went out from under me and I fell. I fell like during the rehearsal, and it was really embarrassing. And my dad had used chiropractic truly his whole adult life. He started his 20s job as being a truck driver. His back would go out and he would be literally crawling from the ground up the couch and would go to the chiropractor, get adjusted, and he would be back on the road. And for a family of 5 total kids, and my dad being the primary breadwinner, that was essential that he be healthy and strong and able to work. So splatter in a dad whose back is going out and a mom who's having these symptoms. It was probably like 2 years before she got her diagnosis. She would have, first she had optic neuritis, and then like she would have one side of her body feel completely numb and or like cement. She went to many local hospitals, then Marshfield Clinic, then finally Mayo, and that is where she got the diagnosis. She started on certain medicines that unfortunately gave her really bad side effects. In fact, I remember one night my dad bringing her into the bathtub because she had such a high fever. So my parents were really looking for alternative ways to help my mom other than pharmaceuticals, because way back then, we did not have the research and the technology and the new meds that we have now. And MS was still a little bit of a mystery to many physicians. So my mom and dad found a chiropractor that was based out of Boulder, Colorado. Her name was Erin Elster. She actually was correlating diseases such as multiple sclerosis, neurologic diseases, with upper cervical subluxations. So my folks actually moved there for 6 weeks and got, I think, daily adjustments by Erin Elster. So chiropractic and natural ways of thinking were very much at the forefront of my growing up. And as I was at this crossroads and trying to determine what my next step was, chiropractic just felt like a very logical and reasonable next step. I went to Palmer College of Chiropractic. I think I turned 30 while I was there, and the rest is sort of history. I truly, at my core, believe that this was my life's calling to be a chiropractor. I think that all of those experiences I had as a nurse seasoned me. They helped me be the best chiropractor that I can be. There was nothing negative that came out of my nursing days. I had amazing experiences, amazing mentors. And I love that quote that says something like, "Smooth seas never made a skilled sailor." So all of these ups and downs and diversities and challenges and experiences, I think truly helped to form me, to create me to be resilient. And I'm trying to relay that to my own children as we have just such a different generation. But I tell people if I am not in my office in Marquette, Michigan, they will find me on a beach somewhere with an adjusting table, taking coconuts for payment. I really love what I do. I know the power that made the body heals the body. Every single day, I'm able to enrich the lives of people by getting them feeling better and functioning better. And I think one of the things that I wanted to do by starting this podcast was to really honor those people who have been in my life. Because every single day I have this gift of them being vulnerable with me and sharing with me. And very recently I had another healthcare patient, and he said, "You're doing narrative medicine." And I was like, I've never heard of that. And my practice is not high volume. I'm not seeing one patient every 2 minutes. I really believe in that power and the connection with people, with other humans. And as I'm recording this, I'm actually coming off of the heels of my amazing team and staff surprising me with 15 years of Wautier Wellness. So 15 years ago, I started the business. I purchased the business from John McLean, and that was 17 years ago that I was a chiropractor. So pretty spectacular times. I'm so grateful for all of the opportunities that people have given me to be in their life. And I just have been asked so many times, why did you leave nursing? And for the record, I did let my nursing license lapse. And I just went through 2 years of intense hoops jumping through, including retaking my national board exam. So I am a registered nurse and a doctor of chiropractic. And I'm so happy that you've given me the opportunity to be in your life. If you're listening, thank you so much. I hope you have a spectacular day. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, like, or subscribe? You can find me on social media at wautierwellness.com, Dr. Stephanie Wautier on Instagram, or Wautier Wellness Chiropractic and Massage on Facebook. And I'm so curious where your next conversation will take you.